Hello and welcome to CVG's post PS4 unveiling reaction show. We're like literally minutes after the show had just wrapped. I'm Dan Dawkins, former editor of PSM3, joined today by Tim Clark.
Former editor of Official PlayStation, whose eyes have failed since last time we spoke.
Yeah, and Matt Elliott.
Matt Elliott, current editor of CVG's online scripts and former OPM freelancer.
So we'll hit straight into it. Tim, what did you make of the showing?
Well, it wasn't called the Orbis, so that was wrong. Clearly it was a code name, and they wisely went for PS4. There was a lot of talk, wasn't there, that 4 was an unlucky number in Japan, so I felt, I suppose, slightly surprised, but pleased. Like, you would call it PS4, that seems fairly obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, it was weird because it was one of the first one of those we haven't been to. We were watching it on the stream, like I guess probably most people watching this, rather than being actually at the show, and at the same time kind of feeding through reaction from Twitter and the people who are around us. So you get a kind of a slightly weird impression. Like, people on Twitter are obviously very sort of snarky and cynical. I think most of the guys around us were pretty enthusiastic. There was a mixture of sort of Sony fanboys and guys who are less so. I wasn't surprised by what we saw. I was really pleased. I thought in terms of the slated games they showed, the clear criticism that you see people kind of making is that stuff like Killzone is another sort of Space Marine shooter, and a lot of the games, you know, there's another infamous game, Watch Dogs have been seen before but look great, were kind of evolutions of concepts which already exist. And my kind of response to that is, what did you really expect? Like, I don't see like paradigms being reinvented everywhere, and console launch lineups tend to be quite conservative. I thought, given that we went into the presentation thinking, will we even see any games at all? We saw loads of games, really. And,
yeah,
you know, it's easy to go, I'm sure there'll be people out there going, well, where was Naughty Dog and where was Last Guardian and stuff like that. The truth is, you know those guys are going to be making games. They've got 70 development partners out there making games right now. You're never going to see it all on the first night. You know, they're going to save stuff for E3. They're going to show you the machine at E3, I'm sure. They're going to probably talk about price further down the line. So I thought it was really exciting, you know, personally.
Matt, how did you find it?
Strong, really strong. I mean, I'm sort of, without going into the specifics of the games, I think the thing that excites me the most is the stuff we saw with the Geico stuff, just the whole package and how connected it is, and the sort of possibilities would that mean that even if it is Killzone and you have seen it before, the sort of the framework that it's in, and the fact that, you know, there's so many like genuine opportunities in the way you can share stuff and you can interact with other people, even down to the fact that you have to use your real name when you're online instead of being sort of Leak Killer 303.
I think this is one of those things where you're going to want to try and... I mean, it was long, wasn't it? It was north of 2 hours probably. And you're
Yeah,
going
it
to
was
want,
easily 2 hours.
yeah, this is an instant response. You're going to want to unpick a lot of the detail. But the real name thing I thought was really interesting, because it struck me as such an obvious anti-troll thing. One of the big things holding online gaming back is people being dicks, you know, not to put too fine a point in it, and hiding behind weird avatars and weird names and calling each other all sorts. So the idea of it being more like a Facebook, say, and you're actually using your real identity, I think is completely to be applauded. Yeah,
it's very strong, sort of pulling back away from that, it feels, and that excites me in itself.
What did you make of the pad, Dan? Because pretty much every leak was proved true.
Yeah, and the pad really, there was no surprise, as in it had been leaked, and I think it just clarified what we'd seen. I think the re-emergence of the share button, perhaps that it had not even gone away, was quite nice, and again felt quite progressive. But yeah, generally the pad was what we expected, and it seems to me to be a good thing.
Some of the guys around us were talking about the kind of actual grips being a bit more 360 pad-like, and the triggers look more 360-ish.
Yeah, and also as well they confirmed, obviously PS Move is coming back. We got an excellent demonstration of that with the new Media Molecule title. I thought foam moulding jelly men looked quite exciting, to be honest with you.
The Media Molecule stuff, though, is the classic thing of like... Because it was like I think it was desperately needed after David Cage had shown his old man head.
Yeah.
Not a euphemism. There'd been a lot of talk of polygons, and you kind of thought, like, didn't we leave this stuff behind a few generations ago when it was kind of the polygon dick waving?
We literally went back to polygons and graphs, didn't we, with Cage?
Yeah, there was the
completely
graph,
intangible.
The graph klaxon was sounded at that point. So they came out, and the stuff they showed was predictably adorable and creative. But then you did still wonder, like, you know, I said on Twitter at the time, I once spent 16 hours making a basically unplayable Little Big Planet level, and I consider myself obviously a creative poet. So, for me, I think they're an incredible studio, but there's always question marks about the actual practicability of it.
Of course, I mean, I think what they do is they make great tools, and you almost rely on people who are cleverer with more time than you to make something fun to engage with. And like again, they had a really good community for sharing, even on PlayStation 3. So you look at the way PlayStation 4 is intrinsically set up to share things and to share live experiences. I mean, they talked about the feature, for example, of playing a game online, having a friend spectate, and then dropping to take over from you. Now that almost creates an opportunity for you to like have like a crowd sharing experience of sculpting something.
I didn't
live.
really understand that. So could I be playing an action game and I'd be rubbish at it and you get involved with it?
Yeah, I think if we were playing Killzone, what was it called, Shadow of the Moon or whatever, you know, and another thing, Shadowfall is brightest Killzone we've ever seen.
Yeah,
it was like Killzone in Ratchet and Clank, but in a way I mean, it's not a creative risk. Let's not overstate it, but it was nice after years of sort of brown and trudgery and industrial kind of Dutch horoscopes.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what else sort of stood out for you? I mean, in terms of like Media Molecule was one of the kind of critics, darling, but Jonathan Blow as well. So a lot of the kind of hipster colleagues seem very excited
I mean,
about his
Jonathan
arrival.
Blow, he's like a, you know, in case of
good, right?
jock style shooting emergency, break glass and knock out a blow. And there he was. and Blow came out wearing a suitably like ostentatious shirt. You know, and again, it had this sort of Twilight funk zone midway through. It was all a bit soft jazz, men with portentous, you know, speeches about surveillance and art, and
it was the Merryweather folk music.
It was
play a puzzle.
It was like a Renaissance fair with sort of you know, pipes and computer screens in it.
But it's good. Sony's always done well about, I think, finding a place for both the big spacey shooting men and driving games, and also for those sorts of indie things. And you only need to see the fact they've got, like, you know, Hotline Miami coming to PS3 and Vita to see that they're really switched on about that sort of stuff. In terms of the other sort of like blockbuster stuff, there was some new IP shown as well. The Deep Down. Were you surprised with the Capcom stuff?
Yeah, the Capcom. I mean, Matt, when we were talking about it, Deep Down technically looked impressive. I mean, being utterly rude, you could say it was Dragon's Lair for the 21st century or whatever it is, or you know.
Or is it a populist Dark Souls though? Because a lot of people
but that's what it really is.
That's what it really looked like. You know, when they've already got Dragon's Dogma, it does seem a little bit odd that they've got two dragon-based games.
The Dragon's just in the same way that Slashing Throats was in last year.
It seems so, yeah. I suppose it's Game of Thrones, isn't it? But it's I thought that looked like relatively promising. It's the kind of game I really like. You made the joke about the D20s.
We just watched it on stream as we said, so it was hard to really process like whether you were, in terms of the visuals, whether you were seeing a big leap or not. They made the point up front that this is being built on high end for now anyway, PC architecture. They've got the 8 gigs of the type of RAM that I've now forgotten the name of, but it's good. The good RAM.
Good RAM.
They're using all of the good RAM. And I saw another journalist on Twitter saying that you'll never see now the kind of leap you got from PS1. I think PS1 graphics to PS2.
Yeah.
Like that, because we now live in the 3D era. It's tough to create that sort of jump, and that's one of the things I think I want to go back and watch all the stuff on YouTube properly in 720 and that, to see kind of what the fidelity, not fidelity is the wrong word, but what the quality is actually like. Because some stuff looked really wow, but other stuff looked kind of like as you'd expect really from current high-end PCs. So that's not a surprise, I guess.
Yeah, and I think certainly like the wish amongst the mainstreamers that Sony were going to come out and deliver this vision of 4K gaming, which was, as we discussed in our last video, it was always a myth and a pipe dream. And then, you know, the reality of showing it live to the world all at the same time was really saying, you know, not only is it not 4K, we're delivering you current standard graphics in 240p almost with artifacting. So I mean, for us, we're all quite wary, like you say. I think as a result, maybe it didn't have the wow and the dazzle factor. Exactly like you say. I think we'll look at it tomorrow on a really good direct feed and think, wow, that's confident. You know, that's strong.
Because Matt, some of the like, without being there, and we try to get our man on the phone on Skype, but he's not answering. He's probably straight into the nearest strip club known Leon. Satire.
That's fine.
What were kind of? I mean, there wasn't. You didn't get that kind of. Journalists get accused of kind of braying too much and being too enthusiastic and too kind of bought into the hype. But I didn't get the impression that after many of the games there was kind of like a raucous roar of approval. It was quite muted.
No, certainly not. I think the only thing that actually got like an audible cheer was probably Watch Dogs, if I remember rightly.
Let me stop you there. I have been handed, as we speak, a piece of paper from a colleague, and it says Watch Dogs has just been confirmed as a launch title on PlayStation 4. Yeah! Woo! Bring the noise. That's great.
And it's out holiday 2013. So that is that was a just slipped in right at the end. That seemed quite important to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. The release date.
Does holiday
was-
mean definitely before Christmas, or could it mean that
means
weird
holidays?
Could it mean that weird after period after Christmas?
I think
it-
Europe are going to get it afterwards, aren't they? That's my understanding. Is that
We're going to get the hi hat. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so, because it's just harder to, there's
Do you
more
mean like
languages.
holidays?
Yeah.
Easter.
Yeah. There are many holidays.
You will get
Bank
the spring
holiday.
solstice.
Summer holidays. Yeah, and that's kind of. But we don't know again. We've speculated, and I mean, what we've definitely got is we've got a name. We've got a really broad set of features, perhaps too much to understand all in one sitting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think so.
the stuff was being fired out, by a guy who looked borderline like he'd been in, like not what do you say, like indoctrinated.
He was
or
like a
something.
stage hypnotist.
Oh,
wasn't
Mark
he?
Kearney.
Yeah, Mark
Yeah.
Kearney was
Yeah.
like, his eyes were so wide.
Yeah, like a
so-
televangelist.
Yeah, it was
He
amazing.
seemed
and-
very nice.
Yeah, he was really nice, but he was saying things like I couldn't look past his eyes or what he was saying, and as a result, I think it was sort of like washing by me the actual facts.
Yeah, it was quite late at night. He had quite a calm voice. Just suddenly you're sort of absorbing these facts and not really knowing what all they mean.
Yeah.
There was a couple of announcements or a couple of moments that kind of felt like, I mean, I guess it was 2 hours long. It was always going to be tough to kind of schedule it in such a way that the excitement was maintained at a fever pitch. But a couple of moments I'd say felt particularly flat. And I'd say, for me anyway, they were probably when Square came out and showed a demo that's essentially been on
Yeah.
YouTube for the
Yeah.
best part of a
Yeah.
year, which looks nice, but if you're going to announce stuff, you can't really re-announce stuff.
All it would have taken was some titles at the end of that, and people would have been excited. But to be sort of teased with the idea of like, we'll tell you something at E3, so be excited about that was.
Well, like unless you're in
crazy.
America, it's pretty late at night, so it's late to stay up to watch the same thing. I don't want to sound like a complete moaning baby, but also the Blizzard thing. As much as it's a big deal for Blizzard
Yeah.
to be back on console, I actually really like Diablo. Played a lot of it on PC. But how huge that is when there are other partners you could probably bring on stage to talk about their stuff. I mean, you might sort of wonder, and again, maybe this is stuff being saved for E3, but kind of where is EA with their sports stable?
Yeah.
Activision probably always going to want to talk about Call of Duty somewhere else in their own time.
I was sort of oddly glad of the lack of an EA Sports because it felt a little bit like the lack of, like you say, Naughty Dog and of Last Guardian. They're things you know that are going to be there.
Yeah.
So I didn't particularly feel worried by the fact that they were absent. But and then in the same respect, you've got seeing Bungie on stage for Sony, like on this sort of big reveal, felt like a bit of a coup. It felt like a really
But
good
even
thing.
that having been sort of foreshadowed by its having, the Destiny reveal was done on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Odd
and
timing,
they'd
really
used
odd
some
timing.
high-end footage in that reveal, as I remember. So you kind of already feel like I know it's
Yeah.
good, but I've sort of seen it.
all the whiz was taken out of it. The minute he came out, we were all there mumbling, going, "It's Destiny, isn't it? They're not going to reveal Call of Duty here." They didn't. It was Destiny again.
There was a couple of new Sony ones. There was the infamous. That was a particularly bug-eyed introduction, wasn't it? From,
That was earnest. That was when we were
Yeah.
right in the
Yeah.
funk. That bit, yeah, I
Yeah.
really thought it was.
That was the most sincere presentation I think I've ever seen.
I honestly thought I was having a psychotic break when that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was Infamous, and there was also Drive Club, which queued up like endless shit Fight Club jokes from journalists on Twitter. If you're reading a website or a magazine, they use a Fight Club joke, I'd stop reading it. I'll say that
Unless
now. I'm
it's
going to make a
CVG.
commitment that we won't do
Internet
that.
grinds to halt.
I'll have to send a memo tomorrow.
You should say to him, the
Should
first
say.
rule of reading stories about Drive Club is... anyway, sorry.
Switch this off.
Yeah.
What did you think about the Vita stuff? Like I know it was sort of like far in the future, but the potential for
The Vita thing, I thought, again, is the sort of thing that's easy to forget, and I saw people also being a bit snarky about that, but I think as a format, Vita needed something that big to save it, and I got
It's
a bit
huge,
I got a bit muddied about how it was going to work, because they seem to be sort of saying, well, any PS4 game could be playable on it, but then that was a long-term goal, and how long's a piece of string? But just the idea that content would be playable without too much lag, it suddenly makes the Vita library look a little bit more interesting. doesn't
definitely,
it?
yeah. And it's
I
sort of
thought it was
coming again.
telling actually the way Sony sort of threw a bone to technology that had almost been written off. And I think twice in the same presentation they went PS Vita, yes, it looked on its knees. We were about to save it by its big brother PlayStation 4 honking it out of the quicksand, and also almost PlayStation Move controller almost. Apart from maybe Wonderbook that's arrived recently, has looked a little bit out on its feet. Now and again, seeing the Move controller used in the context of the Media Molecule game, you went, wow, maybe Move's got
I'm not
some,
a big
some
like
life.
tech guy for the motion stuff, but what's the significance of the fact it's stereoscopic, the new camera then? Anyone know?
I think I assume it's like this is guesswork. But I'm assuming much like Connect is that it's mapping from 2 points, so the depth perception would probably be better. But that's just logic rather than prior knowledge.
Yeah, and I guess actually the camera was something that again had been rumoured, but we'd had no image leaks of it. So
this would be on the YouTube data as soon as like we started talking about Move. You just see all the drop-offs. Quick, get back to a real game.
Badly.
Yeah, and if you can explain the sort of the effect of having stereoscopic, then please do put it in the comments.
I mean, was it largely over what you were expecting, Dan? Was it less or more than you were expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I thought actually, like, it's exactly what we predicted on our first video. We talked about them having to respond to like an post-Apple world changed by tablets and smartphones, and I thought they exactly did that, but just strangely in this weird mechanical way.
Classic Sony sort of way, though.
Yeah, and they kind of guffed what was actually, they were saying very brilliant things. I thought what was most notable about it was Sony, like, not being Sony in terms of what they were delivering, but being classically Sony in terms of the way it was delivered. And like, you know, getting all the cues wrong, the pacing was off, bringing out Robo-Men, even like when the suits came out, you know, with the loose collars and then made like an ad-lib joke, but it was worse than some of the jokes I've made.
It was an absolute sea of like open collar shirts, blue blazers and jeans,
Cool
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
that was...
I say that sat here in a Christmas jumper. New hardware is like Christmas for me, that's why.
And so as a result, I thought, you know, maybe they hamstrung their own message. But when you break through the core of what they've said, they've really done everything kind of what gamers would want and what the business world would want. And there's lots of things they hinted at that weren't properly resolved. For example, like the ability to self-publish on PSN. Now, if you talk, like we talked about, they've got to open up the digital marketplace. Now, if publishers can self-publish, they're already a bit of an indie darling. That's incredible. And they're doing it by, you know...
So it's the idea that you'd effectively submit your game like you would a podcast to Apple and it would just kind of go up?
Yeah, I guess like the App Store or something, you know? And again, that's really exciting. And does it extend to control over pricing, control over your business model? I really don't know. But that's exactly the type of question they've got to address in the world we live in today. I thought stuff was excellent, like talking about just pressing the power button and like the machine just switches. Like
yeah, well, that was one of the things we predicted from Vita, wasn't it? That it would take its cue from the operating system and effectively be always on. I mean, but there was like a sigh of relief in our bit of the office when they said that it would have the multitasking background downloading stuff, which I know seems basic, but like they had to get stuff like that right, didn't they? Really?
Yeah, and exactly that. And even the very like unusual stuff that was quite exciting, like saying your PlayStation 4 will know your preferences and take the liberty of downloading games for you. Now, like, you know, is it going to go like, I don't want to like virtually spend my money when I come home, but PlayStation 4, what have you done? And like, and it's downloaded some whiz bang, you know, hipster shooter for me.
Matt, what did you make of the whole like try before you buy stuff with Geico?
I think it's potentially excellent, and like the fact that it's instant as well is amazing, and you know the sort of that cloud element of it, and the fact that you know everything is at your fingertips all of the time. I mean, it is great for indie developers that are making good games that people perhaps wouldn't try. You know, I think when I look at the PlayStation Store, sometimes it's difficult to navigate, and as a gamer, I'm probably notoriously lazy. Having stuff just at my fingertips that I can decide within like 2 minutes whether or not it's something that I want to play more of is potentially huge.
Who wants to speak to an actual man who is at the event right now?
Yeah,
I definitely do.
This isn't going to go wrong, is it?
So we'll pause for a second and try and bring in Leon from Official PlayStation Magazine. Hold on one sec. So we're now joined here by Leon Hurley, who's online editor for Official PlayStation Magazine and has been at the PS4 reveal. Leon, how was it? What was the mood like?
It was good. I think there was a sort of an air of expectation. I think it sort of started quite slowly, and when they started showing actual sort of things, then people got quite excited. I thought it was interesting that the two biggest kind of whoops were for Media Molecule's little puppet dance, and I think the Square Enix, the Luminosity engine, the dragon sort of spitting fire everywhere.
Do you mean the Capcom thing, Leon?
The first time people sort of... Sorry?
Do you mean the Capcom dragon? Or the...
that whole sort of section, I think when they when the Final Fantasy brand director, whose name escapes me, came out.
That went down well, did it?
Yeah, I think there was a sort of... People sort of quite liked seeing what they almost remembered PlayStation doing. Like Knack, for example, I thought looked like a very... almost kind of PS1 style, that kind of quite jaunty, bouncy cartoon sort of thing. And that went down quite well.
Have you had a go on the minibar in that room yet?
No, no.
So what were people saying about what were people saying when they filtered out? What was the overall impression of it?
I think there's a bit of sort of a discussion maybe about the sort of the PC-ness of it, sort of questioning how much of it, whether it was just sort of a PC in a box. I think a few people were talking about the fact that they didn't show like something with a light on, like an actual, like a console or a unit. So I think there was a sort of a bit of questioning over why there wasn't like a physical entity. It felt very strange to kind of promise games and promise this sort of connectivity and promise, if you like, but not have a thing you can point at and go, that's what's doing it.
How long did you have to queue to get in?
About 40 minutes or so.
Was it cold?
There was a very strange single door that was letting 2 people in at a time, and a lot of very sort of quite cold and angry Americans.
Do you wish you were back in England right now like we are?
No, it's quite nice. I've not been to New York before.
Leon, it's Dan Dawkins.
Hello?
Just to let you know, it's Dan Dawkins. Were you? Hello. Were people surprised at what they saw? Do you think?
Yes, there were a few times people sort of say something, and there'd be that kind of like, hey, look at this, and people would be like, is that a thing to be excited about? Like, I think a lot of the talk about, they were very sort of careful about not really clarifying when they were talking about the social media and the connections and the tablets and the phones. They were sort of, like I say, promising a promise of what was sort of coming, but steering clear of giving overly sort of obvious examples. I mean, they talked about stuff about being able to watch your friend play a game and be able to watch sort of backseat drive people playing, and that stuff was clear, but some of it was a bit sort of just kind of, there'll be some tablets and there'll be some phones and they'll all be linked and stuff will happen, but they never really kind of drilled down into sort of exactly what that would mean, apart from maybe just sort of more Facebook status updates.
Going into it, as you were waiting to go in, what were kind of the wild rumours in terms of what people were kind of guessing might happen that didn't come off?
I think the main things were price and release date. I think everyone sort of thought, because so many things have been, some things have been repeated so many times, I think everyone just assumed that it was just going to be a given, that there would be this sort of $350 price. All they said release date wise is holiday season, which is the end of the year for America. That's what they sort of call Christmas. So the release date was kind of right, which also makes it a little strange. There isn't a physical object yet.
Was there any talk, like whispers amongst the show floor, about price or release date for the UK?
No, nothing at all. No.
Was there any secret gossip at all you can tell us right now?
No, it was all pretty much like.
We shouldn't have flown you then.
Sorry?
Come home. You failed.
No, it was good. I mean, I sat behind Mark Healy. I could see them. There's a little media molecule sort of section in front of me, and I could see them kind of passing their phones around. They were swapping like tweets and pointing at things. So they were having a good old time. They seemed to be quite happy with what was happening. But it was just got in. We got shown all the stuff. Everyone sort of clapped in the right places, and then we got out again. It was very, very efficient, really, which was good. It didn't waffle. It didn't kind of go on sort of too long.
It was 2 hours, man.
It felt quick. It seemed to be over quite suddenly, and I didn't at any point sort of find myself sitting there going, "I'll get to the end of this bit." Everything was as exciting and interesting to sort of see happen.
Maybe because it's quite late here, we didn't always get that feeling. But it is like 2 a.m. as we speak now. So, what presenter came off best actually on the show floor, and actually who got the worst reaction?
I think I can't remember their names now. The Evolution guys, sort of, Matt was quite nice on stage and he came across quite well, but I think the game was sort of, it's a driving game, and everyone was like, it's a driving game, but he was obviously clearly enjoying himself.
About a year of their work dismissed there. I know what you mean.
But yeah, I can't remember, there was a joke and it absolutely fell flat, and there was an awful kind of silence as everyone just waited for somebody to say something, and then they sort of carried on talking. I can't remember who said it now. There was a weird bit at the moment actually when Andrew House turned the wrong way to face. He introduced the next speaker and then turned the face the wrong way and sort of waited, even though it clearly wasn't going to come from that direction. And when he tapped him on the shoulder, it was like a little comedy sort of double take. I'm not sure whether that was like a mistake or whether that was meant to be a funny moment, but
The other Dan here accidentally put 2 streams on at once, and it was not in sync, and it was like Skynet had become self-aware. That was probably our high point.
Generally free of.
We just didn't stop laughing.
You had to be there, really, to be honest, Leon.
Well, we're a bit tight for time, Leon, so we might have to wrap it there. Is there anything else you'd like to share quickly before we go?
No, I think it's interesting that they were talking about they designed it. They started work on it 5 years ago. The PS3 had already been designed, but even by the time it had come out, they could see where the future was going. And this is the sort of result of that. So all that kind of social stuff and the streaming and the Android phones and tablets and all that sort of stuff. I think it's interesting. If they're telling the truth and they were planning this 5 years ago, then they could be on top of something that's about to happen that we haven't really kind of registered properly.
Leon, just before you go, what would you mark it out of 10 as a press conference?
7 maybe.
Classic 7 on the fence. Beautiful. Thanks, Leon. Have a safe trip back.
Thanks.
Sure. Take care.
That's how easily I'll switch him off.
He's done.
Just like that.
He's wiped from our memory. No, he's still talking.
Stop talking.
You can remove the image, but he still keeps going.
I'm going to kill him at source.
So there we go. That's bringing us pretty much to a wrap on our reaction. We'll quickly go to the guys and just see what they think for a score, because I think that's quite fun. We'll start with Matt first.
I'm normally a notoriously low scorer, but I think that's a big fat solid 8. I think take the slightly predictable games out of the equation, look at the package as a whole. I think it's just brimming with genuinely really exciting possibilities, and the medium-old game looked amazing.
I'll go 8 as well, because I'm a historic overmarker and a PlayStation man at heart. The games didn't blow me away, but I think, like Matt, the ideas I thought were certainly up to what I hoped for and expected. I'm really glad it's out this year. I think that's not to be overlooked. I think they could easily have said all that's wrong. It's actually not out till sometime next year. So what's really exciting is next gen starts now, isn't it? Like Sony famously got it wrong and last time and said next gen doesn't start till we say so. But this time they have kicked it off, and kind of like over to you, Xbox now.
Yeah, for me, I think content at times was a 9, delivery dropped to a 6, overall an 8. Just agreeing with you in a different way, basically, just to be really obnoxious.
Can't give 3 scores. It's not Famitsu.
What's that? 3 8s?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 8s. I thought, if it wasn't for the presentation, it would have scored much more highly, and I think we all wanted to go out on a high rather than a kind of limp pseudo-political nod to Bungie.
You'd rather chop off 45 minutes and have 2 more interesting games in there for 5 minutes each, you know what I mean?
If you could have dropped 45 minutes and gone out on Uncharted, even if it was a render of Drake's face and he winked to the camera.
That's all you needed.
Or
little sniff of The Last Guardian,
little sniff of The Last Guardian. And
feathers blowing in the wind.
emotively, everyone would have gone out super happy. And I think that would have made the difference. So, yeah, as ever, let us know what you think in the comments. I'm sure people have got lots of different views on it. There's going to be lots more on CVG over the next few days. Head over to the site, and look out for us with more video reaction soon. So, until then, bye.
Cheers.